Biden-Sanders Unity Task Force recommends, and then we have this document is fixated on the perceived, and now I'm going to translate this for all of us. And now remember, ladies and gentlemen, what this is not some like remote just ravings of some purple-haired walrus out at sea and, you know, just billowing out a mating call into the night sky. This is the official desire of the Democrat Party of the United States of America. This is what they are going to implement when the Democrats come to power. This is what Biden will do if he wins election. This is what the Democrats will do after Trump finishes the next 4 years. Lord willing, we get another 4 years of Trump. This is your future. This is not a possibility. This is the future. This is why I got so angry earlier and my language got a little off base, because this is going to be a completely different place that we're going to function inside of, and we don't have time for people to continue screwing around. So the anti-whites refer to the totality of this, essentially summarized in this anti-white verbiage of perceived racial inequality that has to be remedied. So, of course, this is excuses. This is the miss of pretext, excuses, pretexts to inflict injury on Western kind. That's what the whole thing is. Right? They write here, communities of color, low-income families, and indigenous communities have long suffered disproportionate and accumulative harm from air pollution, water pollution, and toxic sites. Highways have been built to enforce racial segregation. So these are some of the highlights of the verbiage from the doctrine. So you see here what they're claiming. This is the combating the climate crisis, and this is the subheader, combating the climate crisis and pursuing environmental justice. Now remember, this will be extended to the non-white population of the globe. So now they're going to be able to say, this is what the Democrats not just be able to say. This is what this anti-white narrative now avers. That is that not only are non-white people suffering in the anti-white narrative because they're non-white, and therefore, because of the miss of pretexts, all of these excuses, anti-whites can inflict injury. Now they are also saying that they suffer more from air pollution. They suffer more from toxic sites. They suffer more from water pollution. They suffer from highways being built to segregate them, because, you know, why did the turtle cross the road? Then they have here, a note is calls for increased taxpayer funds to go to what the anti-whites refer to in this document as frontline communities. And what they mean by this, I believe, is communities and non-white communities who suffer the most because they're on the front line of these things. So you see how they craft the anti-white narrative so that you are, if you stay within their narrative, the reprobate. Democrats will work with affected frontline communities, non-white communities, to develop a screening and mapping tool to ensure racial and socioeconomic equality in federal climate, energy, and infrastructure programs. Democrats will work with affected non-white communities, so that's going to be all of them. Remember, this is not a possibility. This is Biden. This is when the Democrats take control. Democrats will work with affected non-white communities to develop a screening and mapping tool to ensure racial and socioeconomic equality. That means that they are going to enrich and empower non-whites at the expense of, detriment to, and ruination of Western kind, and therefore you and those you care about individually. We will, quote, we will support locally driven economic development and commit to directing a significant portion of clean energy and sustainable infrastructure investments to historically marginalized communities to help create local jobs and reduce energy poverty. Energy poverty, ladies and gentlemen. Install clean energy technologies, including community solar, buildings resistant to climate change impacts, expand access to green space and outdoor recreation opportunities. In other words, they are going to be moving, restore ecosystems. In other words, they are going to be moving, they're going to be using your tax dollars, your money, to improve, with more excuses, the lives of non-white people at your expense in their communities. And they're going to be cleaning up their communities, what they have done to their communities with your dollars. They are going to be moving them to your communities, because your communities are the ones that are not frontline communities. So they're going to be moving them into your communities. And you see that indeed this is the case as we move through the document. Protecting communities by reforming our criminal justice system. Reform of the justice system, specifically the way the system impacts those in black, well, so in other words, not black and brown, non-white communities. So specifically the way it impacts those in these communities. So in other words, the system has criminalized, listen to this verbiage, the system has criminalized poverty, over-policed and underserved black and brown communities, that's the verbiage used in the Biden document, and cut public services instead of offering the incarcerated the opportunity to turn their lives around. Our prisons are overcrowded and continue to rely on inhumane methods of punishment instead of treating those who have served their time as full citizens upon the return to society. Too many of our laws continue to punish the formerly incarcerated, erecting barriers to housing, employment, education, and voting rights for millions of Americans. So in other words, the Democrats are going to stop policing the non-white communities, stop charging them, stop punishing them, stop what they call, what is it again? The pipeline from the high school to the prison cell. They want to stop this pipeline so that when anti-white, non-white children beat or whatever, steal at schools across the United States, the schools are not going to be able to call law enforcement. It will be made illegal to involve law enforcement. Of course, none of this is true. This is a public document that you all can look at for yourselves, but by all means have CNN interpret it for you to find the truth of these things. So the only way to achieve the equity in an outcome of punishment is to reduce punishment for the non-white criminals and increase punishment. So in other words, become hypersensitive to any breach or coming anywhere close to breaching the law for white people. This is how they will achieve the same outcome, equality of outcome for non-white and white criminals. And of course, they're going to make criminals out of white people who aren't actually criminals and allow many non-white people to commit criminal acts and not punish them so that they can achieve this equality. And they want to do away with things. Obviously, they say here that upon the return to society, many laws continue to punish the formerly incarcerated. That would be, of course, like the laws that allow you to see sex offenders and child molesters who move into your neighborhood. Right now, you're able to look them up and see, whoa, I don't want to live in that neighborhood. There are a bunch of child molesters. Well, the Democrats don't want you to be able to do that anymore. Of course, that's not true. Just look at this document online for yourself. It's a public document. But by all means, again, have CNN interpret it for you. So when it comes to where they get to live, how they're employed, which means employers won't be able to turn away somebody who, say, is a murderer and got out of jail. An employer won't be able to say, no, thank you. We don't want murderers here, or whatever it might be, and because it'll be against the law to do so. incarcerated people suffer from serious mental health and substance use disorders at higher rates than the general population. Yet our country has chosen time and again to criminalize mental illness and substance use instead of building an equitable and affordable health care system. Black Americans make up 12% of the US population, but 33%. Now, this is the Biden document, and I'm afraid to even read their document on YouTube. You can look it up online. The Biden document is pointing out that the percentage of different non-white communities in the population of the United States is far smaller, and they name here two specific communities, is far smaller than their representation in the prison. So that representation is far larger than their representation in the population. No White Guilt is not saying that. It says so on the Biden document, and you can, Biden-Sanders document, you can look it up for yourself. Yet our country has chosen time and again to treat people of color more harshly than white Americans, from over-policing to prosecution to sentencing, instead of making investments to build safe, healthy, and thriving communities. So they're going to remedy this. So in other words, this is what I was just talking about, ladies and gentlemen, and you can probably, as you all are hearing me speak, you can think of some of the ways that the Democrats are going to handle in the United States, are going to handle rectifying these disparities. In other words, if a particular non-white population in the United States is X percent, then you won't be able to have more than that X percent, or maybe even a couple clicks below that X percent in the prison system. How many prisoners are they going to release, the Democrats, to be able to achieve that? How many of these groups, individuals of these groups that are criminal, are they going to allow to walk because they've already reached the limit in the prison system? Are you beginning to see that a vote for Biden is suicidal? This is not something snarky that you can laugh about or that you can ponder like a midget wit as a novelty take or something like that. This is the end of your family's lives. These are going to be predators to the tens of millions released into our neighborhoods. They are going to be on the hunt. There's no joke about this. Donald needs to be elected for what he won't do. The statistics above limit the populations, and those are the populations, or the majority of those incarcerated, however, insist that it is due to, right. So they say that the percentage above their representation in the population is due to anti-white slurs, is because of bad white people. It's white people's fault. So it's not actually people committing crime, but if they are committing crime, they don't deserve to be punished because they're only committing crime because white people. So you see why you don't engage, again, in these conversations with anti-whites. You get out of the anti-white narrative and you have the conversation from our field rather than from theirs. How can you have a conversation with somebody who has those conclusions? So, of course, the solution that they're offering is to arrest fewer non-white criminals and to punish fewer non-white criminals. Says here from the document, we must start by preventing people from entering the criminal justice system in the first place. That's a quote. Now, of course, look it up for yourself, but that's from the Biden-Sanders document. Instead of holding individuals accountable, hold law enforcement accountable for arresting them. So it will be the heresy of the law enforcement for arresting these people. What kind of people are going to end up being police officers in a Democrat-run the United States? When you end up being lauded for arresting more white people and punished for arresting non-white people, what kind of people are you going to end up in policing? When you lose your job for arresting too many non-white people, but you get a promotion for arresting more white people, What will your relationship with law enforcement look like in that environment? This is sobering stuff. This is their official plan. This is what Biden and the radicals, the anti-white radicals in that particular party are going to implement, period. Democrats believe we must ensure real accountability for individual and systemic misconduct in our police departments, prevent law enforcement from becoming unnecessarily entangled in the everyday lives of Americans, and reimagine policing for the benefit and safety of the American people. That is the actual verbiage they use, ladies and gentlemen. They call it reimagining policing. They are going to reimagine policing so that police officers are not arresting non-white criminals that go over the quota that they are permitted to arrest. And they have a system of rewards built into arresting more white people. What is your speeding ticket going to turn into when you have a police officer who pulls you over and maybe his job is on the line or his promotion is on the line, and he has you at 35 miles an hour in a 25 zone, and he can give you a speeding ticket for $10, or he can lie and say it's reckless driving and a lot more. And then when you say that's not what happened, he pulls you out of the car and beats you for resisting arrest. And then you can go to jail. He gets to keep his job and he gets to be given his promotion. What kind of people are going to be policing you then? This is what the Democrats are going to do in the United States. Says here, in recent years, some innovative police departments have enacted evidence-based reforms to change their approach, investing in robust training and putting in place, and even more crucially, enforcing strong standards governing conflict resolution, de-escalation, and use of force. We must, and of course, I'm sure many of you heard in Virginia that they are trying to reduce assaulting a police officer to a misdemeanor. So if he's not wearing a uniform, if a guy is just out or a woman is just out in the community and you knock the teeth out of their mouth, that is going to be assault and it's felony. But if he puts on or she puts on a uniform and you knock the teeth out of their mouth, that's just a misdemeanor. You're going to get a $25 fine or whatever it might be. This is what the Democrats are moving toward. And we are in this state because of conservative mindsets, because people have remained in the anti-white narrative, and you still see it today. Remember that when you think and you hear what we have come to, when you hear the precipice that we now stand upon, remember how we got here. It's because white people stayed in the anti-white narrative, because nobody had the vision and the fortitude and the tenacity and the willingness to cuss at and be cussed at those who wanted to get out or to stay in the anti-white narrative. We didn't have people who fought to get out of it strongly enough. We didn't have an idea. We didn't have the vision. We had people who wanted to stay with the inertia and the old ways. And now you see why I get so passionate. Now you see why I'm tired of having these arguments. Why now you see why I'm no longer going to be okay with meeting up with other white positive people and having a disagreement about whether the dangerous or feckless idea that they are sharing that's been done 100 times and failed 100 times, why I'm not going to be okay anymore with just saying, okay, well, you have your idea and we're going to keep doing this over here. Best of luck to you. There's no more time for that, because now, over the course of my life, over the course of your life, we are on this precipice, and we have these anti-white attack militarized battalions setting our cities on fire, blinding police officers with military grade lasers, shooting firearms at people who won't allow themselves to have their head caved in by anti-whites and their property destroyed. We're at this precipice now. So now, whereas in the past, I've been very polite and I've been okay to say, okay, well, you can just go your way and I'll go mine. Now I'm more of the mind of grabbing these people by the lapels and say, if you lead any more of our people down this dead end path, I might stomp the shit out of you, because I'm not going to watch these children any more of our children now subjected to the kinds of things that they are subjected to. These things that Lovely Porge shared with us, programs taking place around the world right now that just 2-3 years ago to everybody else would have been unimaginable, would have been absolute. To us, we said, no, this is going to happen, and it has come to fruition. I'm tired of predicting things that come to fruition and then having so many people say, I'm still going to go some other direction. I'm sick of it. I had so many of these older guys tell me, listen, son, if you just keep predicting things that come true, you'll be able to point to them and people will say, this must be right. Well, old timers, that only held true back in the day when you had people of character who gave a damn. Now you have a lot of people who have no character. And it seems like it's going to take something very different to get their minds off of continuing running us up on the rocks. We will require immediate application of these standards. Democrats will establish strict national standards governing the use of force, including permitting deadly force only when necessary and as a last resort to prevent an imminent threat to life. And look, ladies and gentlemen, for the qualifiers there when these things become bills, because they'll say, except when dealing with anti-white slurs, heretics, except when dealing with heretics, then you can gun them down, as has been permitted. We will require immediate application of these standards to all federal law enforcement agencies and condition federal grants on their adoption at the state and local level. We will require officer training and effective nonviolent tactics, appropriate use of force, implicit bias. So something you cannot see, touch, find, taste, measure. What kind of good police officers going to stay in that environment? And peer intervention, both at the academy and on the job. And we will ban, the Democrats say, racial and religious profiling in law enforcement. Ladies and gentlemen, there isn't any racial or religious profiling. What you have is mathematics at work. The police show up where there is crime. That is what happens in law enforcement. There isn't profiling. So it's called probability. It's not profiling, it's probability. It's a mathematical subject. It's why many anti-whites are unable to comprehend it. I understand. But the reality is that the police go where crime is most probable to take place, where people are being victimized by criminals. That's where the police are located. But what the Democrats are going to do is they're going to say, no more probability policing. You cannot be in those places. What is this going to do? You're worried about the economy now. What is that going to do to the economy then? What is that going to do for your ability to have and hold a job, to provide a future for your family, to provide a safety for your family, to provide health care for your family, your children, the orthodontist bills, the kidney treatments for your son, whatever it might be? The business that you might be able to work at, or you would have worked at, will be out of business because they can't function, because the places they distribute to are unable to function since the police can't police there anymore. And then guess who's going to pick up the tab so that the featherless bipeds walking around in those areas with no work and violence on their mind, that they can continue to eat with a credit card instead of food stamps in the United States. Now they have a credit card, and so it straight out of your ass. It's coming straight out of your ass. That's where it pops out. The money comes right out of that back pocket of yours and goes right into that card in their hands. It's going to be you who have to feed these people. At the same time that you can't find a job and to pay and feed, to pay for the food for your family. So we also have new laws to be proposed to sue police officers, and we already are seeing some of these across the states. This will be at the federal level now, to sue police officers for policing, making it easier to do that, and to even sue prosecutors for bringing cases against people. We cannot create trust without holding those in power accountable for their actions. Democrats will reinvigorate pattern or practice investigations into police misconduct at the Department of Justice and strengthen them through new subpoena powers and expand oversight to address systemic misconduct by prosecutors. Systemic misconduct by prosecutors. In other words, we translate this, prosecutors get cases and they're not right now choosing to, at least on a large enough scale. I mean, I'm sure they are. This prosecutor in Missouri, this anti-white, non-white woman, I'm sure she's doing this, but not enough prosecutors are looking at, well, this is a rape, this is a murder, and then saying, is this a non-white person who committed the rape or murder? Not enough of them are looking at the race and then dismissing the case on the basis of race. That is what the Democrats are going to do at the federal level. They're going to create new subpoena powers to expand oversight to address systemic misconduct by prosecutors. Far too often, the law has shielded police officers who stand accused of heinous violations of civil and human rights. Democrats, and we just saw one of those heinous violations. A criminal stole a weapon out of a policeman's belt, used that weapon on the police officer, and in accordance with all law and training, he returned fire with his service weapon. Now he's charged, I believe, if somebody can correct me unless I'm wrong. CNN, if you're listening, jump in the chat, please, and correct me. I believe he's charged now with murdering this individual. So we're not going to allow that to happen anymore. So it says here, Democrats supporting lowering the intent standard for federally prosecuting law enforcement officers for civil rights violations. We will also act to ensure the victims of federal, state, or local law enforcement abuses of power can seek justice through civil litigation by reining in the doctrine of qualified immunity to increase police accountability. And that means, want to be a police officer? Do your job and upset a non-white person, and they then can use the power of the federal government to sue you and to press charges against you, and you will go to jail. How many police officers then are going, how many cases, ladies and gentlemen? And obviously, this is a huge document. It's going to take more than one going free to get to all of its elements and to talk to all of you as well. But how many times now, when Biden becomes either, I suspect Biden won't be around in another 4 years, but if Biden were to become president, if we don't get Trump elected, or if Biden's successor gets elected 4 years from now, and this goes into effect, and they begin to implement this at the federal level, how much of a norm will it become across the United States to witness what we are beginning to see now in many videos, and that is law enforcement watching as anti-white, non-whites beat the bloody piss out of white people. How many of you all saw the video? I'm sure it's fake. You have to ask CNN. Everything I'm saying, by the way, is just made up for jokes, just for giggles. And some of the things I say happen in War of Warcraft, but definitely not the real world. How many of you all saw the video of the airport where a handful of anti-white, non-whites absolutely fell upon and beat the hell out of a white guy and his white girlfriend while law enforcement at the airport watched? That will become a norm with this, because if you're a police officer and you step in, you are likely to get sued. You are likely to have the federal government file charges against you. poverty is not a crime, and it should not be treated as one. Democrats support eliminating the use of cash bail and believe no one should be imprisoned merely for failing to pay fines or fees. So right now, ladies and gentlemen, and of course you see the outcome all across Western civilization, these anti-white mayors and governors of these states and cities across the United States, instead of, when they arrest these, you wonder, why does there seem to be this limitless number of anti-white soldiers to be in the streets? Well, because those who are the police are able to arrest are taken down to the police station, and then they are, according to New York, and again, this is fake, they are, the mayor saying, don't even bother just filing, just let them go. Just let them go. And where they are filing charges, of course, they're the filing charges that are beneath what they're actually arrested for. And then they're saying, no bail, you can just leave. You don't have to put anything up. You don't have to, nothing, you have nothing at stake. You can just go free. And the very next night, they're out in the streets again. If they had to put up some sum of money, and remember, when bail is determined, apportioned, or what by a judge, they do it based on how much money you have. So they want to figure out a percentage for you that's going to be painful. It's not a matter of, well, if you're a rich person, it's going to be easy to pay for this. If you're a rich person, it's going to be a colossal sum. And if you're a very poor person, it's going to be a tiny sum relative to most people. It's going to be a lot for you. But if you have to do that, then you get back out in the street, you get arrested again, you lose what you had to put up to get out of jail. Democrats are going to do away with that as soon as they hold the presidency. And they're saying so to you right here. Let's see, pre-trial detention reform, the federal bail system to clear metrics for reducing pretrial detention rates and prohibit risk assessment tools that carry bias. So in other words, it doesn't matter how potentially violent or crazy or the individual is in imminent danger to another person or people out in the population. Think about if you're a woman and you have some predator and he is maybe you and 3 other women. He is an imminent threat to you. If he's non-white, according to how the Democrats are going to handle this, if he is a threat to you, they're not going to be able to say, as they are now, this person is just going to leave the cell and leave our custody and head right back to the houses of these people and kill them. So we're not going to let him go. No, they're going to say, no, none of these metrics will be permitted anymore because it's heretical to do so. That is in the Democrat plan. What do you think of anybody in the white positive sphere who says now, vote for Biden? What thoughts do you have for them now? So there's a lot more here. I want to take a break from it. And we can also potentially, I guess. Oh, the other thing here that's really important. Really important. And is it in the next segment? I'll say it now. Okay, yes, I'll say this now. This is really important. You folks really have to hear this. The Democrats intend to reduce sentences retroactively. Now remember, it's not true. Everything I'm saying is not true. You have to look at this document for yourself. You have to have CNN interpret it for you. But according to the document, the Democrats are going to give judges the power to retroactively determine if prisoners were overcharged based on their race and on the previous minimum limits that they could be given. So they'll be able to go back and say, I think this murderer, I think this rapist, I think this gangbanger, I think this whatever has been in jail long enough. And even though he's murdered somebody in jail, or he's not going to go before or she's not going to go before a parole board. He or she is not going to be not going to have to face the psychiatrists and everything they do in parole board, which we already know are lenient as all hell. No, they're going to create a whole new cadre of judges equipped with the power to reevaluate all of these non-white prisoners and determine whether or not they think they've been in jail long enough, irrespective of their behavior, and then set them free. And I ask you again, you're getting the adult, the mature, the reasonable, the realistic, the pragmatic path here to recapturing our destiny and going free. And when you go elsewhere, when you talk to people that go elsewhere, and they say things, they want to come up with some, and you know it's going to happen if they haven't said it already. Vote for Biden or whatever they're going to be saying. You'll be armed with this information, and you'll be able to say to them exactly the kind of thing that they are promoting by saying these things. What will this do? This element alone, what will this do to the United States, to your neighborhood, to your family? Releasing these animals onto the street of all races. But you damn well know that they're going to be prioritizing the non-white people because they are the frontline people who have suffered, according to the Democrats. These are the special ones that we all remember we learned about as MPs for our whole lives. They're the special. Everybody's the same, but non-whites are better dancers. They're better athletes. They're more spiritual. Everything is better. They're better in every way. Everybody's the same, but they're better in every way. And they're also more victimized in every way. They're the ones that are long suffering. They're the ones that are wrongly put upon. They're the ones who have no power. They're the ones who always get the raw end of the deal in the anti-white narrative. These are the meme pathogens that you and I have been infected with. And that is the morality, the anti-white morality that informs these anti-whites and the decisions that they are making. That is going to be the morality that is going to inform their decision of who's going to get priority of having their sentences reviewed by this whole new cadre of judges with the power to review all of the past sentences in prisons that they are already saying are absolutely surfeited with an overabundance of non-white people who shouldn't be there, because the only reason they're there is because of the color of their skin, vis-a-vis the evil heretics that are in the white race. So it's not going to be, it will be, of course, the white criminals that will end up released as well. But non-white criminals are going to be the ones prioritized. And I'm going to tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to think long and hard about. There's so much here to think about. So many ramifications to dig into, that you should allow it to sink in, and you should allow it to inflame you so that you get out there redoubling and retripling, requadrupling your efforts for white well-being to help people go free. Because these people, when they get out of jail, when they're released, these people in the streets, when they are able to commit crimes with impunity and the police just watch and do nothing for the reasons I was talking about, do you think that for a second they're going to hesitate to come and get you? Do you think for a moment that they're going to hesitate to victimize you on your way into the grocery store, on your way out from the mall, from Macy's, the Christmas shopping trip that used to be so safe coming out of Macy's? Do you think they're going to hesitate when they know that a police officer might lose his job, might go to jail for simply intervening, when all you're doing is maybe fracturing the eye orbit and breaking the jaw of some white woman when you steal her purse? And then, just like in South Africa, they're gonna say, oh, well, the reason why she was also ended up raped and dead was because it was a robbery gone wrong. That is going to be the kind of verbiage we see in the United States, if not coming up with Biden's, with a victory by Biden for president, it will be subsequent, unless we do what we have to do and possibly some other things take place, societal context shifting things take place, and we can forestall this for a little bit longer while we continue to spread white well-being. I want this to impassion you. I want this to empower you. I want you to be knowledgeable of what the anti-whites are endeavoring to do, what they are absolutely going to implement. This is not a fringe document from some loony in the Democrat Party that is saying this is our ultimate aims. This is the heart, soul, and body, and belief, and blood, and sinew of the Democrat Party. And because of the way democracy works, because the population is infected and living inside of the anti-white narrative, because the numbers of non-white voters who overwhelmingly vote Democrat, it's just a fact, but of course I'm probably making that up. You have to look it up for yourselves. Because of those facts, you're going to see more Democrats in office, and you're going to see more of these sorts of things coming to reality. We have got to move like the wind. Let me see what you all are saying, and then we will. What time is it? Okay, we're coming up on 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll take a look at your questions. We'll take a look at a couple of more of these community comments, and then we will get back to maybe a song and get ready for some phone calls before Slots was what it was. You are not being at all exaggeratory. They say they're going to have investigational entities to ensure outcomes are unheretical. Precisely. They absolutely are. And in fact, ladies and gentlemen, they're not looking for equality. When they say equality of outcome, it's not what you might think. When an anti-white says equality of outcome, that means there needs to be more white people punished relative to non-white people. Percentages. So you're not going to just say, well, if white people are whatever percent and non-white people are whatever percent, then that needs to be, oh no. No, you now need to make amends in the anti-white narrative. That's why you don't live in their story. Because as I said all the way back when I was 11 years old, I said, this is a bloody ending in this story if we stay inside of it for our people. And that's exactly what it is. Thank you very much, Slots. Beautifully written.